What's happening out there? It's Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Austin, Texas. Welcome to 15 Minutes of Flame. We are now in the 25th day of 2018. Taking off like a rocket, just like last year. Pretty soon we'll be saying, wow, where did the year go? Wow, that really fast, blah, 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 blah. And it will. It will. So how is everybody today? Are we healthy? Are we happy? Are we actualizing our potential? That is really kind of where it's at now, right? It's where it's at. You know, a long time ago, well, not too long ago, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, I came across a really interesting article about kind of where we are as people in our society. Like it's like basically two types of people, and this really connects to sort of the greater world issue, and trying to understand where we are, what's happening, and seeing things in a way that's, you know, in our perspective, what our perspective is, whatever that is. Clearly, and there are basically two responses to how we deal with that now. One is to hunker down and be a hermit and let the shit show pass you by and kind of write it out, which I think is at times kind of a valid thing to do. I mean, I unplugged for 2 days on Sunday and Monday because I was just completely crispy and fried as much as I could. I did a show on Monday, and I also had some clients on Monday, but it was unplugged. My cell phone, very little email exchange, so on and so on. But there are basically these two poles. One is the hermit, and the other is sort of the Paul Revere type, and the person that says, you know, the British are coming, and there is a call to action to alert people to what's going on. So these are the two sort of various types that we have currently in our culture. And again, we may ping and bounce back between the two, but I know where I pretty clearly stand, and I think that's something that Jordan Peterson talks about as well. He says, in order for us to tap into our authentic nature and who we truly are, we have to. But he talks about this from the perspective of the hero's journey, and from a Jungian model, and that we either live from a place of our conviction and begin to actualize that in the world towards some greater moral experience or manifestation, moral realization, or we wind up inverting. This is a bit different than being a hermit, by the way. Or we wind up inverting, and when we invert the energy and we do not answer the call, then what happens is we begin to live a life of bitterness, grief, shame, difficult reconciliation. So what Peterson is basically saying, hey, look, you've got something inside of you that says, actualize, make things work, make things happen, take a stand. It's a very interesting, it's kind of a Joseph Campbell-esque model in some ways. And I agree. I've been doing this for the last 10 years, and this has been my calling and to some extent my stage, whatever. So anyway, where are you on that? Where are you on that piece in your life? What are you doing? How are you actualizing? How are you, meeting this energy inside yourself? For men and women, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are. But it does, I think, become amplified in the times that we're living in. And I think we're all doing our very best to move along those lines, whatever they may be. Somebody's in the chat room. We got a little chat action early in the day. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Judy. How are you today? Nice to see you in the chat room. Come on by the chat room. We've got kolaches. We've got free kolaches right out of the oven. And any kind of wild coffee drink you can imagine. It's all in the chat room today, and it's all free. So we're going to talk about a couple different things today. And I want to bring Emily Moyer on. I'm going to see if I can get a hold of her today and do maybe a brief, like 20-minute thing with her and then play it tomorrow. Because a lot of you know Emily from Off Planet Radio and the stuff that we've done together. Well, Emily was a competitive gymnast. And she actually taught gymnastics right here in Austin, not far from my house. At a place called the Gymnastics, Center. It's a kind of a big deal here in Austin. So if you want your daughter or son to be a gymnast, that's the place you go. They've got all the best teachers, and actually people come to Austin to actually be a part of this academy. It's a gymnastics academy. And I'd love to bring Emily on, see if I can get her to do like I said, about a 20-minute thing to talk about this Larry Nassar piece, which is just yesterday really came to kind of this explosive conclusion around him and what he had been doing with these young gymnasts. And boy, it's really intense. The story is really, really intense. So this guy Larry Nassar is actually a this is where things get really weird, okay? Like, this guy was doing things at a level that took the gymnastics program in this country to a whole nother level, okay? It made the gymnasts competitive with China and Russia and, all Japan and all the other countries that tend to be gymnastic powers. And what he did is he combined training and sports medicine together. So it was like before you would train and then you may get injured and then you would be treated. And what Nassar had done, apparently, and I need to get Emily on the show to clarify, but he brought these two disparate sort of disciplines together and helped create athletes who were always operating at an optimal level, so that their training, their sports medicine, it was all kind of one holistic model. He got tons of awards. I mean, you go onto his wiki page, and this guy's got tons of coaching awards and medicine awards. I mean, he was a big deal. He was a totally big deal. And he changed the culture of gymnastics in terms of how these young women train and achieve and all that stuff. Well, then, of course, there's the dark side. And the dark side is that he was molesting a number of these young women, which is absolutely horrific. And not only was he molesting these girls, he was also found with a large collection of child pornography on his computer. So, this guy's clearly messed up. I mean, really just messed up. And I watched when the judge gave him the verdict. He's being sentenced. He was already in prison. He was in prison for the child porn stuff. And then now he got this secondary trial, and it was the sexual abuse stuff apart from the child porn stuff, and he got between 40 to 150 years in jail. So this guy's never getting out. He's already got a pre-existing sentence on the child porn. He's never getting out. He's toast. And the judge, wow, her name was Aquila, Judge Aquila. You know what that is? She's the eagle, Judge Eagle, swooping down and delivering a verdict. And she said, "I have just signed your death warrant." It's true. That guy is not going to make it. He will not make it in prison. He is going to be engaged in a run of hell of his own making. And I watched him. I watched his face as the verdict was being read, and it was like, wow. You could just see just behind the eyes that there was this like entire kind of collapse of the being. You could see it. The being was just collapsing. It was fragmenting. It was weird to watch this guy's look on his face. Like the next onset for him would be complete disassociation and insanity. That is coming, boy. Whew. Intense, very, very intense. Jupiter and Scorpio expanding into the darkness. Very intense. So I want to get Emily on board and see what she has to say about Larry Nassar and this whole thing, because that was her world, and I think she'd be quite informative. You know, what is the value of seeing this? Well, the value is that there's, I guess, one less perp on the street. But again, that clearly is a value. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's, you know, we don't need people like that taking advantage of young girls or young boys or anybody. It's a good thing. He's in prison. But it's also very strange that somebody who could be so depraved could also revolutionize something. You know what I mean? And I'm not like making a case for the guy, but it just, you look at, it's like one of these strange oddities of life, that somebody can be that successful and that revolutionary and evolve something to a point where, you know, they're changing something. They're changing how things are done. And then on the other side of that, he's, you know, this dark, depraved little creep. And it's like life on earth is like that sometimes. We like to think that things always are 1 + 1 = 2. And that would be great. Good person, solid, upstanding, has moral judgment, moral character. And look, they're also doing things that are really cool. I mean, that's not out of the question, trust me. But sometimes these things do not go hand in hand. They just don't. And we're sitting there, you know, looking around and scratching ourselves and saying, what the hell happened here? How could this person be so effective, so revolutionary, and at the same time be just a complete and utter creep and depraved knave? It's just, I'm going to talk about that with Emily. And it's just a notice of the human condition at times. So, speaking of the human condition, looks like Mr. Kim Jong-un is playing a perfect game now. He is now trolling the United States. He is trolling Trump. He's trolling Tillerson. He's trolling the United States. I don't know if he's getting his marching orders from China or Russia or whether he's in touch with Tony Robbins. I have no idea. But now he's calling for reunification between the two Koreas. It went from, hey, let's have a little talk and let's have a little co-Korea experience with the Olympic Games to reunification. I mean, he's ramped this thing up in about 2 weeks. And he says reunification without foreign aid. Because Mr. Kim Jong-un is clear that foreign aid is essentially a poison pill. Because you get that foreign aid, and guess what? You are beholden to the people that have given you that money, and if you don't pay it back, they will do whatever it takes to get their pound of flesh. He knows this. He knows this. He understands this. And I'm not lionizing Kim Jong-un. His father was a brutal, absolutely brutal dictator, and he meddled in the affairs of other countries. It wasn't like North Korea was just some isolated satellite. You look into what happened in Rhodesia, and clearly there were three external forces that were backing the Rhodesians and creating the Rhodesian opposition. It was China, Russia, and North Korea. So North Korea has, dabbled in coups. They've dabbled in all kinds of stuff all over the world, and at home, clearly a bloody dictator. So I'm not absolving Mr. Kim Jong-un of his past or his father, but it's kind of interesting as to what's going on. And I guarantee you that he's probably still building up his arsenal and doing everything he needs to do while he's making these overtures towards peace and reunification. And what is the United States going to do? I mean, basically, he's kind of taken them out of the discussion, because if the United States comes in now and strong arms Korea and basically tries to be the bully pulpit, and get on the bully pulpit, it's not going to work. I mean, it's going to look bad. It's like, well, hold on. These guys are trying to work it out. Let them work it out. It was a brilliant move. And I saw it coming. I swear to God, I saw this thing coming. So keep your eyes on the Olympics. They are starting next month. It's going to be a very, very interesting run-up, a very interesting opening ceremonies, as they always are. We looked at the sort of the ritual clues that are dropped inside the opening ceremonies and the closing ceremonies as well. Boy, the London Olympics were the best, weren't they? For all that stuff. Holy Moses. Talk about esoteric, talk about occult. Wow! Didn't get much better than that occult theater of the London Summer Olympics. So yeah, interesting stuff with North Korea. Very, very interesting. Donald Trump is on his way to Davos. This should be great theater, man. Wow. This, because Davos is where all the world leaders go, and they talk about what they want to do with the global economy and money and all that good stuff. You've got the Bilderberg meeting. You've got the World Trade Organization meetings, and then you have Davos. And these are where the big plans are made. They sit down and they map out where the global economy is going and all the other stuff that eventually trickles down to us. And here comes Trump, and on the heels of his shithole comment, he'll be dealing with leaders from Africa at Davos. So this will be very interesting. Now, apparently there are plans for people to walk out on him during his speech. This is from Reuters. It says a growing number of Davos attendees are planning to walk out of U.S. President Donald Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum this Friday. Several conference goers told courts to protest his remarks about African countries earlier this month. Trump repeatedly called African countries shitholes in a closed-door meeting about immigration. Attendee Senator Dick Durbin and others have said. Okay. It happened. It's like, okay. What do you think, Obama? These countries have been essentially turned into what Trump was talking about because of extremely poor management, leveling huge amounts of debt, and having these NGOs come in and do their circular change with one puppet dictator to the next puppet dictator. And there's absolutely no traction, no sustainability, nothing. And in many cases, these countries have been subjected to war and regime change, and excuse me, that's rarely taken into account. But it's probably an honest assessment. Is it the most poetic? No, it's not the most poetic. But it is an honest assessment, and what you do with it from that point forward, that's a whole other discussion and topic. And I've also said that we have extreme issues in this country with areas that would qualify as shithole status. So it's not just a world phenomena. There are shitholes. I've been there in this country. So now he's going to go to Davos and deal with these people. What does he say? I can just imagine the conversation. And who's one of the African leaders? Bonang Mahali, and he's part of the leadership of South Africa. He's CEO, Davos attendee. Bonang Mahali. What do you say if you're Trump? Hey. Yeah, I know. I called your country a shithole. I know. But look, between me and you, your country could be really, really, really great. Really great. And I plan on bringing a series of Trump hotels to South Africa just to show how great your country can be. I mean, what do you say to that guy? He sits there looking at you. I mean, you call my country a shithole, mother. I'm like, hey. It'll be interesting. Anyway, they plan on boycotting. They plan on walking out. Boycotting Trump's Davos speech was first broached by business leadership South Africa CEO and Davos attendee Bonang Mahali in an open letter. Leaving Trump's speech after he starts is probably more powerful than boycotting it entirely. Some Davos attendees speculate. At this year's graduation ceremony at the University of Notre Dame, dozens of students and their families silently stood up and walked out as Vice President Mike Pence spoke about freedom of speech. How about that? African CEOs said they'd like Trump to acknowledge what he said, or that he said something inappropriate, and say he's sorry. Do you think Trump will say he's sorry? Do you think he'll say he's sorry? Mr. Leo rising, Mr. Mars with Leo on the ascendant? I don't think that's happening. We're only looking for that, just to apologize, said Luvuyo Rani, the CEO of Selulu Ulutho Technologies, a South African internet company. There's no way Trump realizes the damage he's caused, said Rani, who added he wasn't sure whether he'd attend the speech or not. Trump is scheduled to meet with Rwandan President Kagame, who is also chairman of the African Union, to reaffirm the U.S.-Africa relationship and discuss shared priorities on Friday, the White House said. Trump's speech is scheduled for the early afternoon on Friday. Trump's remarks aren't likely to do much damage to long-term trade and investment between the U.S. and African nations, Ronnie said. South Africa has deep connections with America, he said, including a history of sending students to colleges there in a close trade relationship. We've got a long history, he said, and that's not going away overnight. Well, you know what changes people's tunes real fast? It's called money. Money. Because everybody has a price. And I'm sure if Trump or the United States or however it gets sorted out offers up some nice little economic bonuses to selected countries in Africa, well, I'm sure they'll come out and sing a different tune. Oh, we met with Donald Trump, we met with President Trump, and we understand now what he actually meant, and he's committed to helping Africa become rich and vibrant, and we looked into his heart, and he's a good man. You know? Just as long as that check cashes, Don. Just sign that check, and we're happy. We're happy to back you up. Got your back. It'll be interesting. And not just this, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with Trump and Davos. It's going to be high theater. High theater. We're in Aquarius now, Sun in Aquarius, and a lot of these global and cultural issues are going to rise to the surface, where things are going, where we are, and it's going to be interesting over the next month. Seriously. Because it's a precursor to what's going to happen with Mars in Aquarius, which is revolutionary and radical. We know that that's coming. We've got this long extended stint of Mars this year between Capricorn and Aquarius, starting in March and ending in October, and going through Capricorn, Aquarius, back to Capricorn briefly, and into Aquarius again, and closing out in November. We believe we end the year, if I'm not mistaken, on Mars and Pisces. I think that's true. Anyway, this Friday, it should be fantastic theater. Absolutely fantastic theater at Davos with Trump. The world has always got something going on, doesn't it? I mean, the North Korean thing, at the very least, is providing us with an immense amount of entertainment, and really fascinating to watch the gamesmanship that's been going on. I saw an interview the other night last night with Gerald Celente and Ron Paul, and it was interesting watching these two guys talk. And some people like Celente, some don't. Some people like Ron Paul, some people don't. And Celente was making a point that that Trump was being, and the entire administration was being run by the Pentagon, because they have the three generals there, and it was fascinating to watch these two guys dialogue about the United States and intervention and the foreign wars. And Gerald Celente made a really good point that I wanted to bring up. Let me see if I can encapsulate it. So he was talking about all the deaths that have occurred in places like Syria, where apparently we're building another army. Doesn't that sound like fun? The word on the street with that is, oh, we're not leaving. We're not leaving until ISIS is fully wiped out or Assad resigns. They just can't take the fact that they lost. The United States lost a war in Syria. We lost a war. Israel lost a war. Of course, because they were fighting the war together through their little proxy army, ISIS, whom they created, and ISIS got their ass kicked. And they lost, and they don't like it. So they're not going to turn their backs. They're going to go back in there. They're going to try to create another proxy army, send more troops there. It's like, leave it alone, man. But they can't, because Syria is not a part of the World Bank and it's not a part of the IMF. So they've got to go in there and try to regime change that country, just like they have to regime change Korea, North Korea. It's like, give it a rest. Haven't we done enough there? Anyway, Celente was talking about these the deaths associated with these wars that have been going on. They've been going on since 2001. And he was like, let's just add up all, it's on the American side. It's on the side of the people who have been caught in the crosshairs of these wars. In Afghanistan, Libya, northern Iraq, Syria. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. We have been a war machine ever since 2001. It's like the Patriot Act gave us this permission to go out and slaughter people. Oh, it's preemptive. They're a threat. Let's just go get them. It's terrible. And Celente was talking about this, and he was connecting this to the Women's March. And it's like, he said, hey, look, we've got all these women marching. What are they marching for? Well, what about all these people that have been dying? What about the wars that have been going on? What about this state of never-ending war? Where are the people marching for that? What about the women that have died vis-a-vis collateral damage and the children? How come there aren't any people marching for that? He made a great point. That we have been involved in war for a long time. And he said basically that the message from the Pentagon and the message from the White House is war is good for business. Smedley Butler. War is a big business. And Celente says, no, I think peace is a big business. And he's absolutely right. What would happen if we took the money that we spend like crazy through the military budget, one of the highest budgets, biggest budgets for the military spending ever on record with Trump as president? Of course he wants to do that. He wants to make friends of the military. He wants them on his side. On some level, I get it. You don't want to piss off the military. You could piss off the CIA, you could piss off the FBI, but if you've got the military, at the very least, you have a rear guard to take on those organizations, those groups. And by the way, have you noticed that all of a sudden we've gone from the fake news front and Trump disassembling fake news, which is actually important. I give Trump credit for this. We've gone from that. Now all of a sudden, he's on to the FBI and the CIA, and it's happening. And this is a pattern that he displayed when he was running for president during the primaries. He would move, he would find a new target. And if the target was Neil Bush, he'd drill down hard on Neil Bush. And even before Neil Bush was flapping his wings and stuttering and getting ready to take a dive, he was on to the next opponent or the next threat. He was already on to Marco Rubio before Neil Bush could catch his breath. This is what's happening now. We can see this. It's the same strategy. He's been doing the media thing and the fake news thing, which by the way needs to be done. And you could throw Fox in there as well during the run up of the Gulf War. Fox was the prophet, Profit, the prophet of fake news. They were paying all these military people to come on and sell the damn war, and it was fake. And that should be noted, put it on the public record that they have indulged in fake news as well. They're not all of a sudden the bastion of clarity, truth, freedom, and honor. Although Sean Hannity's done an interesting pivot. I couldn't stand the guy for years. I couldn't. Now he's kind of pivoted and he's become sort of more on the alt side a little bit, more on the, hey, let's listen to Julian Assange side a little bit. That's an interesting turn for Hannity. I don't know if that's real. I don't know if it's coming from his center, that he's seeing the light and now he's working towards some other kind of end, or he's just, morphing himself so he can be part of the new news cycle, the new news wave. I don't know. But it's interesting to watch because I couldn't stand the guy before. And now he's moderately watchable at this point, even though I don't really watch him. Tucker Carlson the same way. I couldn't stand Tucker Carlson. Hated him. It's like, why don't you open your eyes up, man? There's so much going on here that you don't understand. You're just mouthing off these kind of Republican, right-wing platitudes. Well, Tucker has done a bit of a pivot too. He's interesting now, at the very least. And he's kind of evolved his game. So it's just a little aside. But Trump has done us a great service. And I mean that. To actually drill down and bust the newsmakers in this country, because they've been dealing in fake news for years. Propaganda. They are the wing of the military-industrial complex, the bankers and the CIA. They're the propaganda wing. And they're no different in many ways than Pravda was during the height of the Soviet Union. It's just a different model, same mechanism. So now it's shifted, and now it's the FBI, and now it's the CIA. And this is going to get interesting. Because what we know about Trump is that he's relentless. If he's there, if it's not President Clone, he's relentless, and he will hammer on this stuff until it ultimately gets done, where something breaks. Now, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the memo and all this other stuff, whether it gets released, whether Jeff Sessions is really working on these indictments. I almost got into a QAnon thing yesterday on the show, but I didn't. So yeah, let's find out what happens. Let's see where the dance takes us. And again, I'm not giving Trump a complete pass on everything, but I think this is interesting. And clearly the FBI and the CIA have been, bought, sold, and paid for a very, very long time. Very long time. Just look at 9/11. I think that's about it today. That's about all we have to go through. I'm going to try to get Emily on and maybe do a little thing on this Larry Nassar character and get her insight into it, because that was part of her world. We will be here tomorrow with Steve and Chris Crimmy, and we'll be talking about solutions, things that you can do to get yourself through this time and beyond, so you can retain your dignity, your character, your sense of self, your sense of community, why you're here and who you're here with. So we can just explore some of those things tomorrow. And, by the way, just got a bit of an insight into the crypto world. A lot of you were very happy about the interview with Christine Hassel last week. And Christine will be back on the show. And she sent me a text last night, excuse me, and told me that Amazon is going to integrate Litecoin. How about that? So you may want to get some Litecoin. You may want to convert some of your US dollars to Litecoin. When Amazon integrates Litecoin, it's going to be official. It'll be official that the cryptos have really arrived, and you'll now have an alternate source of paying through Amazon. I don't know what that means for the rest of the cryptos. Does that cripple the rest of the cryptos? Does Litecoin become the standard, the crypto standard? I think we'll get Christine on again soon to try to understand what that means. And another person who would be very interesting, and maybe I can bring them on together, is a good friend of mine, Eric Roth, who is also kind of a wizard of cryptocurrencies. And maybe we could just get a jam session going on. They know way more about it than I do, but I could ask questions, and they could both sort of chime in. It'll be an interesting. Maybe we'll just do a Friday with the two of them and get into the depths of cryptocurrency and blockchain. All right, that'll do it. So take care of yourself in all ways, shape, and form. Do your best to retain your dignity and strive for excellence in everything you do. Because if you don't, at the end of the day, you may regret it. All right. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame. I'll be back tomorrow with the Friday Farcast. Until then, take good care. See ya.